Good morning and welcome to Career Launch Live. I am your host, Katherine Mccord, and I am particularly excited about today's guest because she is a very close friend of mine. I'm going to go ahead and bring her on without any further ado. Welcome, Miss Lisa Duke. Hi, Lisa.
Hello world.
Yeah, it's fun. We do have international viewers, so that is the proper greeting. Yeah, just hi world. So tell us, it is for those who don't know me, I am Katherine Mccord. I do own a recruiting and consulting business that works on a national level here in the US. I also have a patent pending anti-bias applicant tracking system that fires the resume. Boo resumes. Don't like those anymore. And then tell us about yourself, Lisa.
All right. Well, I started my grown-up career in IT and worked there for a couple of years, but my heart was always more towards entrepreneurship. So had a couple of stops along the entrepreneur trip, but now I am an accredited financial counselor, financial fitness coach, certified life and weight coach, and specialize in weight coaching, but I still have all the money expertise and experience, which is what
we're going to talk about that weight coaching at the end of the show because it is something interesting. But I want to talk about today the financial aspect. So this is all things pay part 2 because we did this last season. We're going to talk about negotiation today. That's going to be our main focus. And real quick, before I give a few facts to kind of build us up to that, what got you so interested in negotiation? Because when I talked about that, you just were like, me, I want to talk about it, me. So what got you so excited about negotiation?
Yeah, I have a funny story about that. So this is a little bit of a brag, but it's not my accomplishments. My dad, when I was in high school, was vice president of a Fortune 500 company. And as such, the management team got sent to this very special, probably very expensive course on how to negotiate. And they came back with cassette tapes of the course so they could practice, which tells you how old I am. But my dad handed them to me. I had just finished college and was in the midst of my job search. And he gave them to me and said, this might be helpful. So I went through the whole course and basically negotiated my first job out of college like I was some kind of boss. And they were horrified at the time, but it worked out.
And we will talk about that in a minute. That is but I love that. So this has worked for you. It is something that has made you more money. Yes. So thus, hence the excitement to talk about it. Okay. Yes. So a few things to know first, going into discussions about pay, is I like to make sure that people know that there is a lovely, lovely, lovely thing called payday law. And payday law, while not in every state, in most states, will cover when you get paid, how you get paid, and give you a lot of protections. And then there's also the wage and hour organization that covers, commissions and makes people literally pay if they have not paid you properly. Trust me, nobody wants wage and hour. So if you ever have a situation where you're not being paid properly, call the National Wage and Hour Organization here in the US, and believe me, your employer will be sorry and that you will get your money. They are a very aggressive organization and they get people their money. Love everything about them. I've actually seen them go into an organization and make that organization pay out over $200,000 in back pay.
Nice.
Yeah, and fines. So super fun. And that happened, and they made them pay it within a week. This was not like, oh, one day when you have time. It was, no, it'll be by this Friday. So good luck to you.
I had no idea that was a thing. Yeah.
Most people do not. And you can just Google it, wage and hour. That's it. So another thing too, so payday law, look that up, see if it's in your state. If it's not, campaign to get it there, because trust me, it makes a difference. One thing Texas does really well is they have brutal payday law. There is no room for wiggle room. Those people better pay you and pay you right. So make sure that you have your payday law knowledge. Make sure that you look up wage and hour and have them in your phone so that if somebody is not paying you, not treating you right, that's who you go to. And then here's an interesting fact that I want to know how you think this affects negotiation. So right now, companies are projected, and this is, so first of all, per Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the average salary increase at the end of last quarter, at the end of last year. So the last quarter in 2021, the average salary increase for an entire role, not for a particular person, but for a whole job, went up 4.4%. Okay. It's actually pretty nice little increase that wages are going up. In certain industries, it went up by up to 20% for a type of role, including in IT, by the way. It's gotten crazy out there. So the wages are increasing. According to SHRM, which is the National Society of HR Management, they are saying that 85% of companies are saying that they're concerned about the inflation costs versus their type of wage increases, because the average company is increasing salaries by about 3.3% for the annual raises. That's for individuals. So the annual raises, but inflation is 7%. So it's not even a cost of living increase at this point. We're getting an increase of less than half of the inflation. So how do you think that's going to affect negotiation?
Well, it's hard to negotiate for most people once you're in a role, although it is possible. I had a friend recently who got in IT, got a 20% pay raise because I think partly because his boss is married to someone who owns a company that does what they do, and realized like we're going to lose this guy if we're not careful. So it is possible, but I think you have the most negotiating power if you're willing to leave the job or if you're entering a new job.
So I wanted to hit on that. So you said you need to be willing to leave. And I agree with that completely. Yes. If you're going to go into a negotiation, you will never come out ahead if you're not willing to walk away. And that's true whether it's for a new role, an existing role, anything. If you're going to negotiate, be willing to walk away or don't negotiate. Those are the two options, because it won't go well if you're not willing to walk away. So, so right now, and thinking about that too. So let's start with, let's say you're getting a new job and it comes time to negotiate. How would you look at a salary and with keeping the current inflation in mind? So we're inflating at 7%. How would you, and you may or may not get a good raise, as we just discussed, next year. So how would you bring that into play in your negotiations?
I think it's really important for people before they start the job search to have done the research. And this is probably something you're better equipped to advise people on than I am, but to have done the research as to what is fair for the job role and for your area. You know, if you're looking at pay scales in the Bay Area and comparing it to West Texas, you're probably not gonna, be anywhere in the same ballpark.
So true.
But you don't want to sell yourself short. You also don't want to move from West Texas to, say, Atlanta for a 5% pay raise and then realize you're vastly underpaid compared to everybody else in the area, and you can't afford the cost of living because it's different than where you grew up. So you have to be savvy to all of that ahead of time.
And by the way, the resources for that would be use a combination of Bureau of Labor and Statistics for the previous quarter for your particular industry. And you can just Google that, Bureau of Labor and Statistics, salaries for whatever in the world your job title is. And if you have a kind of weird job title, make it something obvious like software engineer, sales representative, something very general like that they would actually use as a terminology. Then Google salary for whatever the position in this area. To Lisa's point, always specify your area. That does make a difference. And look it up in terms on several sites. Don't pick one site, because they're not. Some sites are more accurate for certain types of roles. So what I always do is I average out. I pick 3 reliable sites like Indeed, Salary.com, LinkedIn, ZipRecruiter, Monster.com, and I average out. And then that's the average salary, and then go from there.
Good tip. I think it's also important to know kind of what industry you are in. For example, typically government jobs, the salary is lower and the benefits are better. So you can't really compare a government salary to a consulting role salary and have it. So do consider that as well. Compensation, and think about the industry and think about the lifestyle too.
Yes.
You know, consulting is you will make more money as a consultant than as an employee. You also probably won't see your family as much once you get So, it's
so true.
Mm-hmm.
So very true. I think too, so total comp does matter too. So let's address that next. So now you know the average salary for your job. And you need to know where you fall in that. Like, do I have particular certifications or expertise that puts me towards the front at the top of that? Or am I slightly more junior, so I need to kind of be at the bottom of that? So figure that out. Then there's total comp. So when you're putting together a package, things like PTO matter. Health insurance. For instance, I have a client right now that fully pays medical. You do not have a premium. That's huge. And they have unlimited PTO, and they have a great 401k match. That matters. That's something to consider. So the salary might be, I don't know, $5K less a year, but look at everything else that you get.
Yeah.
So what are some other total
$12K in insurance deductions out of your paycheck? It's okay. You'll be fine.
Right. Exactly. So what are some other things like that you would look for in the total comp package?
Well, and skipping back just a second to what you were saying about know whether you're junior or senior. Also, if you don't have some of the certs that make you super valuable, go get them. Like, I get very frustrated with people who won't invest in themselves. It is not your employer's job to make you more attractive on the job market. Be willing to invest in yourself. If you're willing to change jobs, then it will pay off when you change jobs. And the time to do that is when you're not looking, not at the last minute. So, but skipping to the actual question you asked. So total comp, you talked about a lot of the things, but I think also knowing that is negotiable as well, right? So you're going to negotiate your salary, but then you can always come back. If they say no to your salary request, they, come down from your original request, you can say, okay, well, I'm willing to meet you in the middle on salary, but I want more vacation time, or I want a flexible work schedule. All that stuff. My husband actually works 4 10-hour days instead of 5 8-hour days. So the the employer is getting the same amount of time from him, but he has a whole day off and can work his side hustle then. So that all goes into how much money you're able to make. And that's all much easier negotiated on the front end.
I completely agree with you. And I do want to point out, though, there are actually a couple of states where you cannot negotiate benefits because they legally have to give everyone the same.
Oh, good.
But for the most part, in over 40 of our states and here in the US, you can absolutely negotiate benefits. So unless you're in one of those difficult states, yes, you can. Also, you can always, even in those states, to your point, you can negotiate. I want to work remote. I want a different schedule. You can still negotiate those things. And those things
And once
matter.
you get into the job, if they say, well, let's just come in for your trial period and see how it goes. And then no. If you don't get it up front, it ain't happening.
Yes, exactly. Say that again one more time.
If you don't get it up front, it ain't happening, y'all.
So true.
For the country folks in the back.
So true. It's so true, though. And I tell people that is a classic, what I call a squash negotiation tactic of, oh, yeah, I'll give you what you want, but later, just come with me and we'll figure that out later. Anytime a company tells you later, it ain't happening.
Yeah, that's the adult equivalent of there's puppies in my van if you want to see them.
Wow. We got a little dark today on Career Launch, but that's okay.
No puppies.
But it is true. Yeah, there's no puppies. It's not good. And companies do that. They trick people all the time with that stuff. So what I tell people is get it in writing. And by the way, if you take anything away from this show today, get it in writing. Because if you get it in writing, then you can come back and go, no, this is what I was told. And you actually have a leg to stand on. So anything, if they do say, we'll give you a raise in 90 days, great. Put it in my offer letter.
Yes.
With the amount.
Yes.
And the specific KPIs that I will need to hit in order to get that.
Preach. Amen.
So now let's start in how to negotiate. And yeah, they do play all day. We have somebody made a comment. They said they play all day. Yes, they do. Companies try all kinds of nonsense. It is ridiculous. Can't with you. So let's start with how to negotiate. So a company sends you an offer and you're like, it's okay, but I want better.
Yeah.
What are your next steps?
Well, and you've already skipped over some of the steps, which is we don't talk about money until we get an offer.
Really? See, I do ahead of time. I tell people, like, make sure the first call, don't move forward unless the range is what you want it to be.
Oh, interesting.
Now, that's the range.
Again,
that's not specifics. I do want to clarify. So I'm talking about making sure that you're in line with the general salary range for this position.
Now, if they publish that and if it's like half of what you're making now, I wouldn't even bother to apply. So it's not bad advice, but in general, and again, with online forms, sometimes they make, it's like a required field to type a number into what you're making now and what you want. So there's some exceptions, but in my experience, it's like dating, right? So if you go on a date and on the first date, you're like, so I would like to be married and have 3 babies. Like, way too early for that. Step 1 is let's see if we like each other. Like, get them on the hook first, right? Before you start making demands.
Sell yourself.
It's a dance. And you should give the impression that all you care about is, I just want to see if this is a good fit, if we're going to work well together, if this is a good environment. You kind of want to give the impression you don't care about money until you have them on the hook, if at all possible.
I would completely agree. That is genius. And actually, so I would make sure that the range is right, but to your point, build up the value of yourself. I tell every candidate that. Show them your value. Make sure they want you. They want you there, and then you can go, oh yeah, this is my number. So you need to pay that to get me, and they're a lot more likely to give it to you. So then what?
So when you do get to that point, you get them on the hook. Another rule is, and this was straight out of that negotiating course, whoever says a number first loses. Period. So if at all possible, you want them to give you a number. I have somebody, so even though I haven't been job hunting, out in the corporate world recently, I have a lot of friends that I help with this. And one of them recently, it was a government job. So it was a published pay range. And he's like, you don't understand. I work in government. It's not negotiable. He got an offer over the top of the published pay range. So even for government, it is possible.
Yes, it is. And I've actually done some recruiting in government, and I will tell you that as well. They'll act like it's not. There again with the puppies, they're trying to squash it, but it is. So we have a question for you. What do you think about signing bonuses and putting negotiable in the salary expectation? So I'm going to take the second one, and we're going to start. So putting negotiable in the salary expectation in an ATS field. In other words, when you're applying, putting that in the field. No. For 2 reasons.
Tell us why.
So here now you can put a range and say, this is the minimum, this is the max, it'll be somewhere in there. That's perfectly acceptable. Negotiable is, I'm desperate and I just need you to hire me. That is how that's perceived. I've actually done polls with hiring managers and said, hey, what do you think about this? To a T, to a person. They all said, you're desperate. Wow. So I don't know how global that goes, but out of the couple hundred people I've surveyed across the country, that's what I got. So don't put
probably
negotiable.
More than most of your viewers have surveyed. So I think that's pretty rough.
So at least it's something, that's something, but don't put negotiable, put a range. That's what I would do. And you take the first part. What do you think about signing bonuses and how that pertains to negotiation?
Well, and let me actually skip back because I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on the range, because what I have found happens is if you give a range, you remember the top number and they remember the bottom number. So if you're going to put a range, it should be like, this is what I will accept or more. My opinion, if you
and it should be what you accept. And I want to be very clear that when I'm saying a range, I'm talking about in the application process, not after you've spoken to them. After you've spoken to them, go back and give your specific number after you understand the position better and they know you better. Do not give a range when it's time for offer. That's ridiculous. But I'm just talking about in the application when you don't know their salary budget.
Right. Because I've definitely seen people where they say, between, let's say 40 and 50K, and then they offer you 40 and you're disappointed. Like, well, you told them you would take that.
Yeah, that's on you. You told them. Don't do that.
Yeah. So signing bonuses. I love free money. So but don't let them fool you. If you say, well, I want 40, and they're like, how about 35 with a 7K signing bonus. Like, they're playing you. They're hoping that you'll get short-term focused and grab the money. But a signing bonus is not part of your compensation for future bonuses that are a percentage of your pay, for raises, right? It's very short-term thinking. So, I mean, if you're getting what you want plus free money because the market is so tight right now, hell yeah. But don't do that in lieu of salary.
That
even
was
if it's a little bit more.
great advice. Yes,
Mhm.
because that's what people always forget is the long term. Oh, it's
Yes.
shiny and it's right in front of me. Give me money.
Yes.
But then later, I typically for signing bonuses, if they just throw it at you, yay, great. Or if they do it as, we know you have this offer for this from this other company where the salary is the same, so we'll give you that same salary and a signing bonus. Okay, great. But other than that, what I tell people to use signing bonuses for is, maybe there's a tool you want to get yourself and you're a contractor. I've seen contractors use sign up bonuses for that. So kind of play it by ear, but very much to Lisa's point, remember that is not an ongoing dollar amount. So very important to remember. So you're at the negotiations, you have your stuff, you have prepared them, you understand the position, and they've given you a number. Because as to your point, let them give the number first, but you want it higher. What do you do?
Well, I think part of it is understanding there is an expectation that you will negotiate, and therefore where they have started is below what they're willing to give you because they're assuming that you're going to want to negotiate. It's kind of like a car lot. The price on the car is above the price they're willing to sell you for because they assume you're going to negotiate, and they have to have room in there to do it. If they just printed, the price at the dealership and everybody came in and wanted to negotiate, they'd go out of business. So assume there's an expectation that you are going to negotiate back and that therefore they have deliberately offered you lower than you want. So I think that's the first piece, is just knowing that that's an expectation. And so if they want you, you've got them on the hook, they want you, they're serious, they're talking offer, they're sending you things in writing, then know whatever number they offer you is not what they're expecting to pay you. It's below, and there's an expectation you will negotiate. And this becomes big with the gender pay gap. Now, I'm not big on blaming the victim, but I also believe in let's take back our power for the things that we can control. A lot of they've done a study. This was in a book I was reading, trying to remember which one, but it was saying they'd done a study, and a lot of the pay gap starts day one, and it's because guys typically negotiate and women often do not. And so
now,
right there,
I will pause you real quick because I've read
some different facts. Okay.
Yep. Actually, that's a misnomer. So the studies about that were typically done. I'd be very curious. So tell me later where they cited that study is coming from. Yeah.
I think
because
it's some kind of business. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
So Fortune and Sherm both did studies that showed that women negotiate just as much as men.
My information might be older, so that
I was going to say it might be an age because these are very new studies. Yeah, this is very new. So what's happening was that was true. So, but I wanted to hit on that. That was true for many, many years. But the more recent studies are showing that women are negotiating more. But the wage gap is still happening because women are not getting those higher up positions. So the wage gap is still very real. But anyway, so
gotcha.
Negotiating. Let's get back to that. So negotiating. So they've given you a number. You're not all that thrilled with it. They expect you to negotiate. So how do you send back an offer?
Well, again, you should know they're expecting you to counter higher than what they offered. And whatever you say, you're probably not going to get. So, right, they offered you 40. You're like, I can't do this job and pay my bills unless I get 45. Don't come back and say 45 because it ain't going to happen. They'll be like, oh, well, we'll meet you in the middle between 40 and 45. If you need 45 or you will die, then you better come in like 48, 47, figure out wherever the meet in the middle spot will be that is your number and go X amount, the same percentage above it.
And I also want to hit on that this is also why it's important that when you're communicating your range to them early on, that you give your real numbers of this is what I need. And that should be the bottom. So, and not just need to get by, it should be need plus I can have a little savings. I can have a little, so that's the bottom number that you give them. and then it goes up from there. And I also want to hit on real quick, don't tell a company, if a company comes to you and overtly says to you, tell us what you want to come on board, we'll put it in an offer and send it to you. If they give you everything you ask for when that's what they say, do not negotiate at that point. Now you're a jerk.
Yeah.
Because they flat out told you, we'll give you what you want, just tell us.
Yeah.
They already lost the negotiation because they're just throwing themselves at your feet.
Security expert or something. You're like super rare if they're like just, but yeah. If they actually give you what you ask for, then it's done.
Don't negotiate. Yeah, that's weird. And it's off-putting. And I've seen people have offers pulled back because they're like, no, don't be coy with us.
You're
don't
showing
do
us right up front you're going to be difficult to work with. We're not into it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say that's not the case. And so they gave you a offer. And so you came back higher, but then they want to counter again.
Yes. And they will.
So
I think that's
what?
part of it, is knowing that they will.
Typically, yeah. I'd say about half of mine do. Half of mine.
Right. So if you have a number in mind, they've come in under, let's say 10% under, you go back 10% higher. The pattern that I've seen is that there's going to be a tendency to meet in the middle. So make sure that number, and that's usually the pattern I see, is offer, right? So offer, counter offer, your counter to them, and then you get what you want. Is that kind of what you're seeing as well?
Oh yeah, very much so. Very, very much so, typically speaking. Now, sometimes it'll end after the first counter. So they send it to you, you go, boo, don't like it, send it back. About half the time it stops there. They'll go,
that
okay.
Means you didn't ask for enough money.
Not necessarily. I've seen it where the person just says, no, this is it. This is what I want. And the company just goes, okay, well, you know what? We really want them. Here you go. You know? Also, I want to throw this out there too. Companies, when they give you that counter, just give them what they want. It's in your budget, as long as it's in your budget. If it's in your budget, don't be a weenie. Don't try to pay people less just because you're cheap. Give them what they ask for. You set a budget for the position. As long as it's in that budget, pay it. Don't be ridiculous. Don't play those games.
I actually have a friend in Atlanta who used to be in charge of the hiring for a consulting company. And actually, this was a job that my husband had. The guy who hired him as a consultant had a habit of paying people more than they actually asked for and they could have gotten away with. And his logic was it's a retention thing, because if they're moving from outside the area to the area, you might get one over on them for a year or two, but then they will catch on to what the going salary is for their job in that area and that you've really underpaid them, and then they will move on. So
yes, they will.
Pay people fair, and you're going to have less of a retention issue.
And you mentioned relocation. And don't be a jerk. Yeah, never be a jerk. But you mentioned relocation. So that's important in negotiation. If you need to relocate for a job, make them pay for it. Make them pay for it. They should be paying for your move. Now, if they don't want to deal with the booking everything for you and all that, and they just want to give you a signing bonus or something like that, fine. But they need to pay up front for your move. None of this paying back nonsense. It needs to be here. You're covering this. This is, I won't have any out of pocket for this move. I'll have the labor of dealing with it, but I won't have the expense of it. They should be paying for a minimum of 50% of your relocation costs. And that's everything from gas to deposits on new places, to moving trucks, any hotels you need between them and their flights, anything like that. They should be paying at least half of that expense. Minimum.
Now, let me ask you, because we've talked about some things that are up for negotiation. So salary, unless you're in a state that doesn't allow it, your benefits as part of your total comp, signing bonuses, relocation. Are there other things that, work location, work hours, days of the week, work schedule. Are there other things that you have seen candidates negotiate for that are kind of out of the ordinary that people could use?
Yes, that's a great question, because I actually have some kind of funny ones that people don't necessarily expect. So I had a candidate that negotiated to be able to bring his dog to work. He didn't want to leave his doggy at home. Yes, I agree. Everybody should just have animals everywhere. I'm in complete favor of that. But unless you're at a hospital or something, then not so much. But But that was one. It was very important to him to be with his dog all the time. The dog was not a service animal. He did not care. He wanted the animal with him all the time. He negotiated for that. He got what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people negotiate for daycare expenses being covered.
Mm-hmm.
I have that were not typically covered, but they said, you want me? I'm a single parent or whatever the case is. Pay my daycare expenses. Auto. I want an auto allowance. I want my gas. I want a gas card where
Company
you pay for
car.
my gasoline.
Yep.
Company cars. They're all, if you're remote, I want you to buy me a computer, but if I leave, I get to take it with me.
Pay my internet. I want to expense. I want to
expense out my internet. I want to expense out my
and
phone.
my cell phone. Yes.
And all companies, if you're W-2, by the way, are required to provide you equipment. But I've seen people negotiate to be able to keep that equipment. It was actually an IT guy. He got the computer he'd always wanted and said, and had it written in that he could keep it when he left, as long as he stayed at least X amount of time. And expect that too. Expect that if you get some of these big perks, like a signing bonus, things like that, that you're required to stay a certain amount of time in order to not have to pay it back. That's very standard. And it's right. It's not, it wouldn't be cool for them to buy you all this stuff and you leave them 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
That's not cool. So that's a very
back to our general
reasonable
advice
thing.
of don't be a jerk.
Yeah, either direction. Nobody be a jerk. Don't do it.
Yeah, it's just good life advice, folks.
Yes, it is.
It's going to happen by accident occasionally, but don't do it on purpose.
It's so true. So start with, at the very beginning of your job search, do your research. Know what you should be getting paid for what you do and be realistic. I've had a few, and not all, but I've had a few candidates over the years that just, they want to ask for the top of the salary range, but really they're at the bottom because they're junior or just don't have that strong of a skill set. So be realistic with yourself. Then when you're going into it, make sure that you establish early in the interview process that you have the same range as the company, but do not give a specific number. Leave room so that you can negotiate later, make sure that you are accounting for how difficult the job is, all of that. In the applicant, since we had that question, if in the application process they ask for a number, either give a range or just shoot high. I've seen the ones that really narrow it down and make you just put one number, shoot really high because those people are weird anyway. And so actually half of them don't pay attention to it, to be honest with you.
That's a good tip.
Yeah, actually that is true. About half of them don't pay any attention to it. I've never heard, well, you put this in the ATS as yours. When it came time for negotiation, the first person who talks to you might notice. The person who's negotiating with you has not paid attention to that mess. So just put in a number, put in a high number just in case, but whatever. So make sure you're being realistic. What's next?
So this is a tactic. My husband named it the Honeypot Tactic, which is something sort of from IT security of, like, you have one server out there that's deliberately sort of the weakest link, but it doesn't do anything. So people kind of go after that. So this technique, you put things in your counter that you do not care about, that are sort of like your sacrificial lambs or whatever.
That is my number one tip.
Yay! Do you have a different name for it?
The magician.
Because I like it.
Look over here, but really over here.
Yeah.
Is what's going on.
We know you're going to shoot this one down, but now psychologically you feel like, well, we already took 2 things off, so let's give them these other 2. And you're like, I didn't care about those 2 either. So I'm actually now at my real offer that I wanted.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I will tell you, this works very effectively. I once negotiated a deal where this guy, all he cared about was the dollars. How many dollars? What percentage of everything am I getting? He didn't notice, and I argued with him on it. I went back and forth with him on this, even though I couldn't have cared less, which sounds weird. Wait, why were you negotiating and you didn't care about the money? Because I wanted to own the client list. And he never noticed that in the paperwork, I owned 100% of the client list. Wow. And I walked away with 100% of the client list.
So you
and I made money in the meantime.
Clients after you left the job.
I had all of them. I took all of them. It was mine. And so, and I made money in the meantime, but I walked away with that. So that honeypot or magician or whatever you want to call, and you have to argue about the thing that you don't care about. That keeps them distracted. Argue about the
So
thing
funny.
you don't. Darren and I talked, your husband and I talked about this. Negotiate it, really pay attention to it. Act like you just really care about that. But make him not notice that thing over there that you actually do care about, and sneak that little ninja in there. So
humans, we're so weird.
we're so weird. We're weird people. I don't know. Establish your value. We talked about that. You have to show them why. I once had a candidate tell me, I asked her, okay, well, why is that your number? She goes, well, I have kids to feed. I said, frankly, nobody here cares. And she kind of goes, what? And I said, I don't mean that rudely. I said, I just want you to understand that's not how you negotiate. Nobody here cares about your kid. They want to know why they want to pay you that, because of what you'll bring to the table. We're glad you have kids.
What's in it for them?
Yeah, yay for you. But establish your value as to why you're worth that much. And she goes, oh, okay, cool. And then she kind of went from there. And that was on a coaching session. So I was supposed to talk to her that way. By the way, I would never condone a recruiter speaking to someone that way. I was supposed to be speaking to her that way, and we had a very good rapport. So establish your value, use the honeypot, know that they expect you to negotiate, and make sure that you are only giving numbers that actually work for you, and pay attention to the fringe benefits. And the total compensation, including your benefits. So we have gone way over time, but I'm very happy that we did. I feel like we did super good. Any final thoughts from you, Miss Lisa?
Yes, I'm glad, because I have exactly one other thing on my little cheat sheet down here. And that is, if you have a weird request, but it's really, really important to you, explain it to them when they come back and question it in terms of why it's good for them. So I told you my husband does 4 10-hour days instead of 5 8-hour days. And the way he's negotiated that at 2 different jobs, the way he explains it to the client or employer is, look, it's good for you if I am out inside these Fortune 500 companies and I am on their systems. I'm seeing what threats they're facing. I'm seeing what the latest and greatest equipment is. And then I can bring back a scaled down version of that solution for you. You want me keeping abreast. It's basically continuing education that you don't have to pay for.
Exactly. So establish the value of your proposition, whether it's for yourself, whether it's for something that you want, always establish value. So
value
with that,
for them. Yep.
Yes, value for them. Yeah, nobody cares about what you need. Trust me. In negotiation, in general, they should care about you and what you need. But in a negotiation, all they care about is their side, as it should be. So with that, I want to thank you so very much for joining us. I want to tell everybody that they can find you on Facebook. Miss Lisa Duke, you can find her. She is in the Treasure Coast area here in Florida. She has her financial consulting ability, but she also, as she mentioned earlier, is a weight coach. I myself can attest to the fact that she's very, very good. So, and she has an approach that's not about you living in the gym. That's not about you starving yourself and missing all of your favorite food. This woman even eats cookies. She's a weight coach that eats cookies. I have seen her do it. And you're welcome. We had somebody telling us, thank you. I have seen her do it. So if you, especially women over the age of 40, if you are looking to lose a few pounds, as I like to say, don't starve or puke, call Lisa Duke.
Oh my God.
And she will take care of you. But no, she's really wonderful. And she is a very psychological, she's about holistic wellness and taking care of you. So definitely reach out to her. She's fantastic. If you want to connect to me, I'm on LinkedIn. Always, I'm pretty much the Katherine Mccord with the spelling that's in Florida. So look me up. I will be glad to connect with you and give you further advice. And next week, join us, because we are going to have Miss Tara Furiani, not the HR lady, and Alan Ibbotson of Wisdom You Didn't Ask For, but now cannot live without, to debunk employment gaps. So join us next week. We'll see you then. And thank you for coming, Lisa.
Bye. Thank you.